Welcome, friends. We will start with two prayers, and then I will take the opportunity to introducing our speaker. Please go ahead, Mr. Durai.
Allah Akbar. Let's pray. Kami berdoa kepada Tuhan agar sudilah membantu mereka yang telah disesatkan supaya menjadi insaf dan adil, dan agar menyadarkan mereka atas apa yang telah dilalaikannya. Ya, sungguhnya yang Maha Pemberi, yang Maha Dermawan. Janganlah menghalangi hamba-hambamu, ya Tuanku, dari pintu kurniamu, dan janganlah mereka diusir dari istana kehaziranmu. Bantulah mereka untuk menghilangkan kabut angan-angan kosong dan merobohkan tabir-tabir kailan-kailan dan harapan-harapan yang sia-sia. Sesungguhnya, Engkaulah yang maha memiliki, yang maha tinggi. Tiada Tuhan kecuali Engkau, ya maha kuasa, yang maha penyayang. Baha'u'llah.
O thou whose face is the object of my adoration, whose beauty is my sanctuary, whose habitation is my goal, whose praise is my hope, whose providence is my companion, whose love is the cause of my being, whose mention is my solace, whose nearness is my desire, whose presence is my dearest wish and highest aspiration. I entreat thee not to withhold from me the things thou didst ordain for the chosen ones among thy servants. Supply me then with the good of this world and the world to come. Thou truly art the King of all men. There is no God but thee, the ever forgiving, the most generous. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, I would like to welcome you all. You always join us from four corners of the world. I know that in Malaysia and other places, right now it's almost 8 in the morning. And actually, these friends joined us when it was almost 7:30. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being such great friends to this fireside. Please bring your neighbors, your family, your other friends, and let us share this beautiful evening every Thursday. Tonight, before this year ends, we thought that we need to actually have a cursory view on our health and healing and the health and healing of our family. And who better than Dr. Sheila Dean, who can talk with us and share her views? Very, very experienced doctor. I will introduce her right now. And please, the friends who just joined us, we have about 53 friends here. Some of them are not muted. Could you mute yourselves, please, right now? Dr. Sheila Dean was the owner of the Palm Harbor Center for Health and Healing, an integrative medicine-based nutrition private practice and wellness center located in greater Tampa Bay area of Florida. It must be a gorgeous place in the world. And if you're healthy, it make it even better. A published author, national speaker, and media spokesperson. Dr. Dean is an adjunct professor at a variety of universities. She is also the co-founder of the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, an online clinic training and mentoring program for healthcare and healthcare professionals. The subject, as I mentioned, that she's going to deal with is a Baha'i approach to health and healing. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation, Sheila. The screen is full of wonderful fruits. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Rujan, that was such a warm welcome. Don't make me cry now. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be joining this wonderful group. And so with that, again, thank you. As you can imagine, the topic of food and as medicine and health and healing is a massive, massive subject. And so what I'm going to share with you tonight in our limited time is really only scratching the surface. So let me make sure I can turn my slides here. There we go. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the Baha'i faith, I think it's important to know that the Baha'is are believers of Baha'u'llah, which is a title that means the glory of God, much like how a Christian is a follower of Christ or a Buddhist is a follower of Buddha. So to learn more about the Baha'i faith, just go to Baha'i.org. So the Baha'i faith, I need to move this aside here, it's in my way. The Baha'i faith teaches us that spiritual and physical aspects cannot be separated, but must be treated together, like what's been referred to as two wings of the bird of civilization. This is an abbreviated list of some of the tenets of the Baha'i faith. There are wonderful writings and teachings on a variety of subjects, including teachings on peace and human prosperity, equality between men and women, the elimination of prejudice, the principles of global governance embodying the requirements of justice, the agreement of science and religion as well. So Abdu'l-Baha, which most of you know is the eldest son of Baha'u'llah and the designated successor and the head of the Baha'i faith from 1892 through 1921, explains that, and I quote, Baha'u'llah has declared that religion must be in accord with science and reason. If it does not correspond with scientific principles and the processes of reason, it is superstition. For God has endowed us with faculties by which we may comprehend the realities of things, contemplate reality itself. If religion is opposed to reason and science, faith is impossible. And when faith and confidence in the divine religion are not manifest in the heart, there can be no spiritual attainment. And in another passage, Abdu'l-Baha says, furthermore, the teachings of Baha'u'llah announce that religion must be in conformity with science and reason. Otherwise, again, it is superstition, for science and reason are realities, and religion itself is the divine reality unto which true science and reason must conform. God has bestowed the gift of mind onto man in order that he may weigh every fact or truth presented to him and to judge whether it be reasonable. That which conforms to his reason he may accept as true, while that which reason and science cannot sanction may be discarded as imagination and superstition, as a phantom and not reality. And I wanted to take a moment to read these two passages to you because I think this is an important and unique and really special distinction about the relationship of religion and science to make and to set the stage for the remainder of this presentation. I think these next two passages illustrate the principles of harmony in religion and science very nicely, so I'm going to read them as well. Illness or illnesses which occur by reason of physical causes should be treated by doctors with medical remedies. Those which are due to spiritual causes disappear through spiritual means. Thus, an illness caused by affliction, fear, nervous impressions will be healed more effectively by spiritual rather than by physical treatment. Hence, both kinds of treatment should be followed. They are not contradictory. Therefore, thou shouldest also accept, I think it's also accept physical remedies, inasmuch as these two have come from the mercy and favor of God, who hath revealed and made manifest medical science, so that his servants may profit from this kind of treatment also. Thou shouldest give equal attention to spiritual treatments, for they produce marvelous effects. O handmaiden of God, these prayers which were revealed to ask for healing apply both to physical and spiritual healing. Recite them then to heal both the soul and the body. If healing is right for the patient, it will certainly be granted. For some ailing persons, healing would only be the cause of other ills, and therefore wisdom doth not permit an affirmative answer to the prayer. Interesting. It reminds me of a father where we ask our dad, we ask our father, I want to eat meat, give me a lot of meat. And sometimes in our father or mother's mercy and justice, and also in their loving kindness for us, they decline, but it's only for our own good. And sometimes it's hard for us to understand. So it may be of interest to you to know that Baha'u'llah did reveal a tablet to an individual. It was referred to as the Tablet of Medicine sometime in the early 1870s. It was actually revealed to a physician and essentially contains basic but specific teachings regarding medicine, health, and the nature of spiritual healing. It consists of about 10 or 11 paragraphs, and in some cases, I think it probably requires an understanding of historical context to understand. And Shoghi Effendi, who is referred to as the guardian of the Baha'i faith, refers to this tablet to the physician or the Lawhead Tib and says the following: the tablet to the physician was addressed to a man who was a student of the old type of healing prevalent in the East and familiar with the terminology used in those days. And he addresses him in terms used by the medical men of those days. These terms are quite different from those used by modern medicine, and one would have to have a deep knowledge of this former school of medicine to understand the questions Baha'u'llah was elucidating. So for this presentation, let's now talk about the 3 tools of healing identified in the Baha'i writings, right? So they are medical treatment, prayer, and joy and laughter. Okay. So what do the Baha'i writings teach about medical treatment? Do not neglect medical treatment when it is necessary, but leave it off when health has been restored. Treat disease through diet. Now, let me just take a moment to help you notice that I've underlined the word treat. And the reason I did is because we often think that diet is something that we use for prevention, but Baha'u'llah makes it clear that we're allowed to use diet to treat. And that's not really something that's still completely accepted in medical science. Treatment for many in the medical arena is still reserved for pharmaceuticals, but Baha'u'llah says that you can treat, not just prevent, but treat disease through diet. So I think that's an important distinction to make. So treat disease through diet by preference. refraining from the use of drugs, and if you find what is required in a single herb, do not resort to a compounded medication. Abstain from drugs when the health is good, but administer them when they're necessary, right? So it doesn't say that Baha'is shouldn't use medications or drugs, that we should use them when they are necessary, but that we start with diet first, and we can use diet for treatment, not just prevention. Whenever ye fall ill, refer to a competent physician or competent physicians. I think it's important that he didn't just say physicians, that he qualified the physician as being competent. You can't take that for granted, right? So whatever competent physicians or surgeons prescribe for a patient should be accepted and complied with. But there's a provision, right? There's a prerequisite. And what is it? Provided that they are adorned with the ornament of justice. So of all the ornaments, of all the qualities, why justice? Why not knowledge, right? Why not brilliance? Why not highly educated, right? A degree from Harvard. Why not experience? Why is he telling us that the physician needs to be competent and we need to accept what they say and comply with it, provided they are adorned with the ornament of justice? Well, take a look at this. The hidden words, which most of you know is a collection of short utterances written around 1857 by Baha'u'llah in part Arabic and part Farsi. The very second hidden words says, O son of spirit, the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Turn not away therefrom if thou desirest me, and neglect it not that I may confide in thee. By its aid, thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others, and shalt know of thine own knowledge, and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor. Ponder this in thy heart, how it behooveth thee to be. Verily, justice is my gift to thee, and the sign of my loving kindness. Set it then before thine eyes. So what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, one component is that we need to do our own, what? Our own independent investigation, right? Avoiding accepting things on blind faith, right? And we see that the medical and even the nutrition community, sometimes that doesn't happen, right? Sometimes things are accepted on blind faith. Even the students, the interns and the residents accepting things on blind faith. Not that obviously, you know, our professors and our preceptors, they're there to teach, but we're also told that we need to incorporate this gift of justice into our thinking. So let's take a look at this passage, the words of wisdom, that's yet another tablet Baha'u'llah revealed after the Kitab Aqdas. There's a whole list of about 13 or 14 of them, and the words of wisdom is one of them. And in this one particular section, he says, the essence of all that we have revealed for thee is justice, is for man to free himself from idle fancy and imitation, discern with the eye of oneness his glorious handiwork, and look into all things with a searching eye. Thus have we instructed thee, manifested unto thee words of wisdom, that thou mayest be thankful unto the Lord, thy God, and glory therein amidst all peoples. So we see that justice is fair-mindedness, right? And if thine eyes be turned towards justice, choose thou for thy neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself. Okay, so let's take a look at this evidence pyramid, right? This is what we call the evidence pyramid. So the least clinically relevant data and information is at the bottom of the pyramid. And the most clinically relevant data is at the top of the pyramid. And as you can see, at the very top is what we call the systematic review, right? So a systematic review is basically a comprehensive summary of research findings on a specific topic, where researchers use explicit and reproducible methods to search, critically evaluate, and synthesize evidence from multiple studies. The goal is to provide a thorough and unbiased understanding of the topic at hand, right? Okay, so it's essentially a high-quality literature review that follows a structured process to minimize bias and ensure transparency in the results, right? Now, look at where expert opinions are on this tier of evidence. It's at the bottom of the evidence pyramid, right? So these opinion statements that come out from various organizations, medical organizations, the AMA, the dental associations, the dietetics associations, that's actually, those expert opinions are at the bottom of the evidence pyramid. Take that into consideration as we explore this subject. All right, let's shift for a moment and talk about prayer. Okay, so let's shift for that for a moment. So what do the Baha'i writings say about prayer? There are two ways of healing sickness, material means and spiritual means. The first is by the use of remedies, of medicines. The second consists in praying to God and in turning to Him. Again, so we've read this, right? Both means should be used and practiced. And you guys might be familiar with the Tablet of Ahmad, which Shoghi Effendi, who is the guardian of the faith, described as having been invested by Baha'u'llah with a special potency and significance, and should therefore be accepted as such and be recited by the believers with unquestioning faith and confidence, right? And elsewhere, Shoghi Effendi was mentioned as saying something to the effect of, greater than prayer is the spirit in which it is uttered, and greater than the way it is uttered is the spirit in which it is carried out. Yeah. Many of you are familiar with the prayer that Baha'is refer to as the long healing prayer, right? And if you've recited it, you know that it takes at least 10 minutes to say. And there's one particular phrase, right? You might recognize this, that's repeated 39 times in this long healing prayer. And then on the 40th time, there's a slight variation of this phrase, thou the sufficing, thou the healing, thou the abiding, O thou abiding one. So what does sufficing mean? To satisfy the needs of. Essentially, a healer is one who can heal. Abiding, lasting for a long time, enduring, to wait patiently for, to withstand. So why does this prayer include this phrase, and why is it so long? Well, maybe it's to constantly remind you of some of the characteristics of God. Right? It's kind of humbling. And for me, it even creates a sense of security when I read the virtues of God over and over again. Maybe the length of the prayer gives you time to sort of get into it and creates a meditative state of healing, right? We are learning that when you meditate on something for a prolonged period of time, it tends to become your reality, right? Now, imagine meditating on healing and health and loving words, which become your thought, which eventually becomes your reality. But is it possible that something physical is happening to you from reciting this repetitive prayer? We know that in the brain, there's an important brain chemical, a neurotransmitter called serotonin. Many of you have heard of this term, right? And it's responsible for that sort of state of well-being, like everything is okay. We know that some medications work by increasing brain levels of serotonin, right? So we know that repetition, such as saying something over and over again, rocking, anything repetitive, rhythmic movement, such as exercise, stimulates serotonin production in the brain, which can possibly explain the calming effect and that healing that can take place from that repetition. Dr. Barry Jacobs, Princeton University, he many years ago originated the suggestion that repetitive motions commonly engaged in those with obsessive compulsive disorder might potentially be a self-medication via the serotonin system. So I would share that. And so for many, sometimes we pray because we're in need of healing, in need of a remedy, in need of hope. Tired of feeling alone, like there's no one out there who can help. We need someone to listen to us like a companion or a friend would. So what if we were given the answers to where we could find these things we're searching for, and all summed up in one little cheat sheet? Well, it's interesting that that tablet of medicine that I was sharing with you earlier ends with this short healing prayer. Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. And finally, we have joy and laughter as the third tool of healing. Abdu'l-Baha says, O thou distinguished physician, matters related to man's spirit have a great effect on his bodily condition. For instance, thou shouldest impart gladness to thy patient, give him comfort and joy, and bring him to ecstasy and exaltation. How often hath it occurred that this hath caused early recovery? Therefore, treat thou the sick with both powers. Spiritual feelings have a surprising effect on healing nervous ailments. Okay, so now the question is, where do we go from here, right? Where do we go from here? So let's take a look at the current American diet, also known as the SAD or Standard American Diet. So unfortunately, the Standard American Diet is accurately characterized by a lot of refined sugar, refined flour, preservatives, additives, pesticides, hormones, trans fats, too much animal protein, too much caffeine, too much alcohol, artificial chemical sweeteners, where the dominant grains in the Standard American Diet is, you've guessed it, refined wheat and corn. And so let's see what these so-called weapons of mass destruction are doing to the obesity trends of the last few decades. Let's take a quick look. All right, this is just so you can understand. In 1990, you can see the color coding, the map here, that anything in that blue color represented, well, the light blue was essentially less than 10% of the population was obese. And we're describing obesity as a BMI of greater than 30 or over 30 pounds of being overweight. And then you can fast forward to 1998, and you can see that there's a lot of color changes there. And now we've got the states that are in dark blue, 10 to 14% of the population is considered obese. And in the peach color, 15% of those people, those folks, that state is considered obese. Fast forward to 2007, now we have new colors. We can see that in orange, up to 20 to 24% of the population's is obese. And in those darker brownish colors, more than 25% of the people in those states are considered obese. That's 1 in every 4 people, or a little more actually. Fast forward to 2019, we can see the trend. It's interesting that Colorado actually was still only 20 to 25%, but still it's going in the wrong direction, guys. And then fast forward to 2023, which is the latest data that we have, and I got this straight off the CDC website. It's pretty bad. Look at those dark states, Arkansas, right? Missouri, and even Alabama, Louisiana. We're looking at something like 40 to 45% of the state's population is considered obese. I mean, that is alarming. And by the way, obesity is an expensive disease, right? Have you priced it out? Diabetes, obesity, cancer, these are all very expensive diseases. It's not the cheap way out. So take a look at this, 1950s, the plates. You know, when I look at the plates of our grandmothers or our great grandmothers, they were small. And when you go to the store and you look at the size of the plates today, they're massive, right? So we can see that there's some portion distortion going on. And there are many, many different popular diets out there, low and restricted carbohydrate diets, carbohydrate focused diets, low fat approaches, novelty diets, meal replacement diets. I mean, there's all sorts of different diets out there. And despite it all, we're getting fatter and fatter, especially in the United States, right? Even though we've introduced more and more weight loss diets, calorie restriction, more low fat diets, high protein diets than any other culture has ever known in the history of the human species. We continue to see more and more disease, diabetes, vascular problems, kidney failure, neurological problems, right? And what industry do you think obesity and disease drives? Of course, right? The diet and the pharmaceutical industry, right? So is it only about calories in and calories out? What about the idea that food is information? That food actually has the ability to act as signals or molecules of information that your genes then translate into proteins. So let me just kind of talk to you a little bit about this very quickly. So this is just a simple review of what we call cell communication and how it fundamentally works. Okay, so you have a signal molecule, right? So let's call that signal molecule a hormone or a nutrient. Let's say vitamin D, which happens to be both a vitamin and a hormone, right? And so there's a variety of steps that lead to the cell's response to that signal molecule, right? Which is ultimately to produce a protein, right? And these proteins then act as good guys doing good things in your body that keep you healthy, or bad guys, right? Pro-inflammatory proteins doing bad things, causing inflammation, right? You may have heard of certain chemical messengers like cytokines and interleukins, right? So what kind of information do you think sugar, refined sugar, and artificial chemicals and trans fats are going to send to your genes? What kind of good things or messages do you want to expose your genes to, right? Messages of health or messages of disease? So the quality of the food is just as important as the quantity. Right, so here on the left side of the screen, there's a lot going on in this slide, but in a nutshell, you have a diet that's high in certain chemicals, like certain components called omega-6s. Let's just call it the standard American diet, right? The burger and the fries and the sweets and all of that, right? I don't have to tell you what that looks like. And these food-like substances are those signal molecules, guys, that send messages to the genes. The genes take that information and flip it around and turn it into a protein that then causes inflammation. And you can see some of the names of the various inflammatory chemical messengers, leukotrienes and thromboxanes and prostaglandins and all of these various cytokines. Or when we eat healthy foods, we get these messages of health, rich in omega-3, for example, that then create proteins that are anti-inflammatory, right? So just wanting to understand not just what we need to eat, but why. So take a look at this. These two mice are genetically identical and they're the same age. Okay, so while pregnant, both of their mothers were fed a toxin called BPA or bisphenol A, right? It's a known carcinogen, but they were given different diets. The mothers were. And look at their offspring, all right? So the mother of this mouse on the left, the large, received a normal mouse diet. The mother of this mouse received a diet that was supplemented with special nutrients like choline that we find in egg yolks and folic acid and vitamin B12. Different diet, different outcome, right? Genetically identical, but you have different phenotypes, which basically means that they differed markedly in their appearance and in their disease susceptibility. So are we eating more than we think? Stressed foods. Have you ever heard of this term, stressed foods? Obese livestock and unusual fat profiles in farmed fish, meat, and eggs may reflect stress phenotypes. Consumer of stressed foods may sense those signals and assume the stressed phenotype. This maladaptive process may promote obesity towards caloric accumulation in the context of energy abundance. Regional tissue accumulation of fat may indicate local tissue stress. Atherosclerosis may result from these stress signals. Okay, medications such as neuroleptics and foods such as diet drinks may generate illegitimate signals by mimicking molecules used for energy management, right? So what happens if that signal molecule is coming from stressed foods, meaning these foods that are causing this inflammation, right? Stress signal molecules. It may not be so far-fetched. So this image comes from a friend and colleague's book, where the idea is that she's trying to explain that it's not just about our genes, it's what we are exposed to over a lifetime, the food that we are exposed to. So we ask ourselves the question, what kind of messages, what kind of foods, what kind of signal molecules do we want to expose our genes to for the best outcomes? The Bob has some interesting writings on the subject of how does what we choose for food affect our spiritual life, as this physical frame is the throne of the inner temple. Whatever occurs to the former is felt by the latter. In reality, that which takes delight in joy or is saddened by pain is the inner temple of the body, not the body itself. Since this physical body is the throne whereon the inner temple is established, God hath ordained that the body be preserved to the extent possible, so that nothing that causeth repugnance may be experienced. The inner temple beholdeth its physical frame, which is its throne. Thus, if the latter is accorded respect, it is as if the former is the recipient. The converse is likewise true. How does the Baha'i writings recommend we eat? And how does this align with modern medical and nutrition science? Baha'u'llah says, do not neglect medical treatment when it is necessary, but leave it off when health has been restored. Treat disease through diet, right? We saw this. By preference, refraining from the use of drugs. And if you find what is required in a single herb, do not resort to a compounded medicament. Abstain from drugs when the health is good, but administer them when necessary, right? I think we read this once before. What will be the food of the future? Abdu'l-Baha says fruit and grains. He says the time will come when meat is no longer eaten. Now we know that it's not like meat is forbidden. Meat is completely acceptable to eat, but it says here medical science is only in its infancy, yet it has shown that our natural diet is that which grows out of the ground. So let's take a look at what the research says about that. Does the research substantiate this? Is there harmony between science and what the Baha'i writings have to say? I won't read this entire thing, but I'll just point out a few things off of this abstract that was published a few years ago. The objective of this article is to present physicians an update on plant-based diets concerning concerns about the rising cost of healthcare are being voiced nationwide, even as unhealthy lifestyles are contributing to the spread of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. I'll fast forward. So healthy eating may be best achieved with a plant-based diet, which we define as a regimen that encourages whole plant-based foods and discourages meats, dairy products, and eggs, as well as all refined and processed foods. We present a case study as an example. Research shows that plant-based diets are cost-effective, low-risk interventions that lower body mass index, lower blood pressure, lower hemoglobin A1C. And if you have diabetes, you know that that's a marker of your blood glucose and cholesterol levels. They may also reduce the number of meds needed to treat chronic disease, lower ischemic heart disease, mortality rates. And they recommend physicians recommending that plant-based diets to their patients, especially those with high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. Now, we know in this day and age, no one diet fits all, and it's about working with someone to identify what your unique needs are. But there's a lot of research that talks about going easy on the meat or minimizing the meat and really focusing on whole foods-based, plant-based diets. Abdu'l-Baha also explains the importance of balanced body chemistry. He says the outer physical causal factor in disease, however, is a disturbance in the balance, the proportionate equilibrium of all those elements of which the human body is composed. To illustrate, the body of man is a compound of many constituent substances, each component being present in a prescribed amount, contributing to the essential equilibrium of the whole. So long as these constituents remain in their due proportion, according to the natural balance of the whole, that is, no component suffereth a change in its natural proportionate degree and balance, no component being either augmented or decreased, there will be no physical cause for the incursion of disease. So it's not just about prevention. And I think this is a really important and key slide that I want to talk about. I'm going to take a little sip here. It is therefore evident that it is possible to cure. Let me just stop and say this. As a dietitian, we don't use words like cure, right? Cure is a term that you have to be very careful with in modern medicine, because the word they like to use is manage or control. But Abdu'l-Baha used the word cure. I think that's important to note. It is therefore evident that it is possible to cure by foods, elements, and fruits. But as today, the science of medicine is imperfect, and this fact is not yet fully grasped. When the science of medicine reaches perfection, treatment, there's that word again, treatment will be given by foods, elements, which refers to foods. Notice the word, not just fruits and vegetables, y'all, but fragrant fruits and vegetables. This is really important, and I want to talk about that. Fragrant fruits and vegetables, and by various waters, hot and cold in temperature. So an element is something that nourishes, i.e. food, right? Not to be confused with the word ailment, which is a disease, and fragrant foods. So I think, in my medical and professional understanding, that when you talk about fragrant fruits and vegetables, what you're talking about is something referred to as, and some of you have heard of this word, something referred to as phytochemicals. Phytochemicals. So phyto, P-H-Y-T-O, is a prefix that is Greek for the word plant. And so phytonutrients are those substances, by the way, not to be confused with vitamins. Phytochemicals are not vitamins, and they're not minerals. We're not talking about vitamin C. We're not talking about folic acid and magnesium. Those are vitamins and minerals. We're talking about phytochemicals, the substances that give that fruit and that vegetable their unique color, their taste, and their aroma or fragrance. Okay, do you get that? So let me show you some examples. The lycopene in tomatoes is considered a phytonutrient. Again, it's not a vitamin and it's not a mineral. Resveratrol in grapes and peanut skins. The sulforaphanes in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, and there's tons of research, especially on sulforaphanes. Zeaxanthin in yellow bell peppers. Lignans in flaxseed. Isoflavones in soy. Anthocyanins in raspberries. Okay, so the thing that makes that raspberry, that beautiful variation of pink, that sort of reddish pink color, the thing that makes that broccoli green, the thing that makes those grapes purple is not a vitamin and it's not a mineral. They're the phytonutrients or the phytochemicals in the food. The additive and synergistic effect of these phytochemicals of fruits and vegetables is what has been proposed to be responsible for their potent antioxidant and health promoting benefits, right? It's the complex mixture of the phytochemicals. It's not about any one phytochemical. And this explains why no single antioxidant, by the way, sometimes phytochemicals are also referred to as antioxidants, and the word antioxidant is very broad, which includes certain vitamins, but also phytonutrients. So this can explain why no single antioxidant as a chemical agent can replace the combination of natural phytochemicals in achieving the observed health benefits. And by the way, there are probably a couple of dozen vitamins and minerals, but there are thousands and thousands. Really and truly, thank God, there are thousands and thousands of phytochemicals that are present in whole foods. When you bite into an orange, you are not just taking a bite of water, fiber, and vitamin C. There are other thousands of phytochemicals in that orange. It's the balanced combination of the phytochemicals present in fruits and vegetables that simply can't be mimicked by a pill containing a single nutrient. And this is why it's so difficult to study nutrition, because when you study a drug, you're looking at one function, one outcome, right? But when you're looking at food, you're looking at multiple agents, multiple nutrients, multiple outcomes. It's much more difficult to control, right? So it's kind of like, think of it this way, guys. It's like asking the piano to play a beautiful song using only one note, right? Middle C, right? So it's the combination of all of the different phytonutrients that's what's so powerful and makes the difference. Okay, so it's not about any one particular food. Y'all don't get hung up on any one particular food, cauliflower or grapes, or try to move away from that thinking and understand that it's the diversity and it's the variation, right, of all of these fruits and vegetables that God's provided so much abundance that really helps. Look at the abstract here where the authors say regular consumption of fruits and vegetables is associated with reduced risks of cancer, cardiovascular disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, cataracts, and some of the functional declines associated with aging. We propose that the additive and synergistic effects of phytochemicals in fruits and vegetables are responsible for their potent antioxidant and anti-cancer activities, and that the benefit of a diet rich in fruits and vegetables is attributed to the complex mixture of phytochemicals present in whole foods. Abdu'l-Baha called it. He called it when he said fragrant fruits and vegetables. To me, this is what he was talking about. So why aren't the studies compelling? Because we're not really comparing apples to apples here, no pun intended. Sweeping conclusions are made about carbs, proteins, and fats, right? Eat this, don't eat that. Well, it's not that simple. Sweeping conclusions are made about these macronutrients without controlling for the presence of phytochemicals in foods, right? So those studies become fundamentally flawed. Single agent studies do not mimic what's going on when we consume these nutrients in higher doses in the diet as a complex mixture, along with a myriad of other agents that are physiologically active that are found in foods. So the question is there a different mechanism for the action of a drug, as I mentioned earlier, versus a nutrient? Do we study nutrients the same way as we study drugs? And now I think we understand the answer is no. So here are some of my favorite online resources you can check out. So the Baha'i writings now tell us that we can prevent, that we can balance, we can treat, and we can cure. What is the connection between the fast and healing? Verily I say, fasting is the supreme remedy and the most great healing for disease of self and passion. There are various stages and stations for the fast, and innumerable effects and benefits are concealed therein. Well is it with those who have attained unto them. So let's look, what does the research say about fasting? So fasting increases a substance called glutathione. So what's glutathione? So glutathione is an antioxidant, and it's actually the most powerful antioxidant of the entire mammalian system. And you'll see it abbreviated as GSH. And glutathione increases 2 to 4-fold when one is fasting, right? There's a 75% increase in something called GGT activity. It's just a substance that contains glutathione. In this article, the authors say fasting leads to wide alterations in growth factors and in metabolite levels, generating environments that can reduce the capability of cancer cells to adapt and survive. Periodic fasting consistently shows powerful anti-cancer effects. So Baha'u'llah got it right again. I hope that's not disrespectful when I say that, that we're prescribed to fast every year. And you never know what you've prevented when you've prevented it, right? We never know what we prevent when we prevent it. So there's a plethora of research on the subject of fasting and cancer. This is just one tiny article on the subject, but there's many. If you do a literature review, you'll see that there's thousands of them. So hopefully we now see that these can be tools for mass instruction instead of destruction. I thought it was fair to ask what about other religious scriptures? Are there references to health and healing? And actually, I'm sure there are many, and here's just a few. In Corinthians 10:31, it says, whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do it all to the glory of God. Leviticus 7:26, moreover, ye shall eat no manner of blood, whether it be of fowl or of beast, in any of your dwellings. In Islam, believers eat of the wholesome things with which we have provided you, and give thanks to God if it is him you worship. And of course, don't forget moderation, guys. Moderation in all things. Tolman was a prestigious American physicist. So Tolman's law of pharmacology, that everything is toxic at some level, even air and water. Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's healthy, right? And just because something is healthy doesn't mean you should eat a lot of it. So it's a balancing act, right? So we ask ourselves, what toxic substances or bad things do we need to get rid of, right? Not just in our diet, but other toxic elements to consider: toxic thoughts, right? Toxic behaviors, toxic relationships. And what nutrients or good things do we need? What are the good things? Healthy food, exercise, prayer, joy, laughter, clean air, sunshine. All truth goes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is vehemently denied. And then third, it's accepted as self-evident, right? It's always going to be naysayers, but eventually it's accepted as self-evident, reaches a tipping point. Final thought. Baha'u'llah says, Ye, O people of the good things which God hath allowed you, and deprive not yourselves from his wondrous bounties. The bounty of good health is the greatest of all gifts, and we know that for sure. So we see that when you combine the understanding of true religion and science, you have health and healing. So with that, I thank you so much for your time. I hope that was helpful in some way. Thank you for joining me.
What a wonderful talk, Sheila. Such beneficial information you shared. It was great. Thank you so very much for sharing all this knowledge of information with us. With your permission, I stop recording and will ask the friends to ask questions. And also, I wanted to say, if friends would like to make comments, if they can wait until the questions are taken care of, then they can comment.